Hello everyone and welcome back to the series where I build a graphical text editor from the ground up, starting from just the terminal. And today, as you may be able to guess from the title, there are some problems that I need to address. As I mentioned in the previous episode, I was going to work on a terminal editor in C++, and a more advanced terminal editor than this one that doesn't require me to enter in lines and use canonical mode. And I'll explain what that means probably later on in the series. In order to do that, I started by just writing a makefile to build the project and then just created a simple hello world program in C++. Except neither of those things worked. Now, remember what I said when I said I couldn't insert tabs with this editor? As it turns out, that was more of a problem than I had thought. I can't actually insert tabs with it, and that meant that I couldn't write a makefile, because make requires tabs in order to function. So I was stuck. And this just goes to show that you should probably test your software before declaring that you're done with it. Initially, I thought that I would try and fix the old editor, and then I realized that would mean I'd have to write more bash code. And I'd already mentioned that I would prefer using something else like Lua. So I decided eventually to just scrap the original editor and start from scratch. I also thought about some ways to improve the original editor, and I went ahead and incorporated all of that into this new editor written in Lua. And let me just say, writing code in a language that you understand is a lot easier and speed things up substantially. So I actually didn't take that long to write this once I really got into it. So let's take a look at the code. First off, I included a bit of code to check if the user provided a file name for the editor. As I mentioned previously, that was something I didn't check for in the previous editor. And in this case, it was very easy to write, so I just went ahead and included it. And actually, talking about input, most of the inputs are fairly safe, since in this case they check for a specific string rather than an initial character. So if I were, for example, to write a string of characters that started with I in the original editor, it would enter insert mode despite the fact that I didn't actually enter an I intentionally. But in this case, that doesn't do that because it checks for the entire string, and so it will just detect, it will only work if an I string by itself is inserted. And the only thing that can crash the program, from what I can tell, is the numerical input, which I'll show you in a minute here. I also started using something called ANSI escape sequences. These are sequences of characters that are preceded by a \27 character, and then a bunch of other characters that help to determine certain terminal behaviors, insert colors or change the colors and styling, set the cursor position, clear the screen, things like that. Trying to use these in the original editor would not have worked because of the problems with backslashes that I've mentioned. And so I just didn't bother using it. These escape sequences were going to be rolled into a video where I talk about controlling the terminal's behavior more generally, but I decided that it would be useful to include them here and to talk about the other terminal behaviors in a future video. The editor is still a basic line editor because, like I said, certain terminal behaviors are kind of locked behind using C libraries, so those will have to wait, but these escape sequences can be used by any language that can insert text into the standard input. And I'll go ahead and link to a Wikipedia article about escape sequences so that you guys can take a look at it if you're curious. In this case, I'm using an escape sequence to clear the screen, to reset the cursor position, to enter and exit the terminal's alternate buffer, and to color the line numbers. And the alternate buffer, if you're not aware, it's basically an alternative screen that a lot of programs like NeoVim and HTOP use in order to avoid messing with the command history of your terminal. So normally, if you're using something like Top, it will show all the text it'll have the terminal UI, but it will take up space in your command history. So if you scroll back up to see commands, you'll end up with a bunch of crap in there from the top command. But HTOP, NeoVim, and my editor all use the alternate buffer, and so that buffer doesn't really exist after you've closed the program. I also changed the text buffer structure. Rather than having just a single string that holds the whole buffer, I now have a list of strings that each contain a line. While this is less efficient, performance-wise, it means that I'm able to easily insert and remove lines. Lua's list and table functionality is top-notch, and inserting a line in this editor or removing a line is just a single line of code. Also, not having to use the echo command means that I don't have to deal with its strange behaviors, like stripping away backslashes. I can just use regular file I/O, just like any other language. I added 2 new commands and changed the behavior of insert and remove. You'll notice that this line number here is cyan, and the others are white. This is the active line, and any editing commands now affect this line, instead of having to enter the line number manually. It advances or retreats based on the commands I use, and I can move it around using the M command. This change not only speeds up the editing process, but it made it easier to implement the ability to move up and down the file content, so I no longer need to scroll. And I actually can't scroll because alternate buffer. The A command stands for append, and I added this because I kept having to exit the editor and append a single line of text to a file in order to insert lines. This append command behaves exactly the same as the insert command, but ahead of the current line, rather than behind. And just for a quick demonstration, I'll go ahead and move up to line 1. So as you can see, it displays line 1 and a bunch of other lines here. Now, the number of lines is hard-coded, so I can't really make this much, I can't really get access to the size of the terminal right now, but this works well enough, so I just hard-coded it. So I'll go ahead and append a comment, so that you'll see that we'll attach the number there. It'll attach a comment there, and then I'll append another comment. And as you can see, the active line moves, so I don't need to enter a line number in order to write code in the case where I'm continually writing line after line of code. And if I use the R command to remove it, it will remove the current line and then move the active line back. So now I've removed a step in the kind of optimal case where I'm not having to jump around the file to edit things. Overall, I'm quite happy with this editor. I can insert tab characters and backslashes without an issue. As you can see, I did some indenting, although it's pretty messy. I also did test it this time, and yes, I can produce a working makefile and C++ code, including backslashes. I can easily edit this as well, so if I missed something that I really need, I can probably make it work. So, thank you all very much for watching, and see you next time, where I will definitely be starting work on the C++ terminal editor. Have a wonderful day.